everyone. So excited to be here. I'm going to get sharing of my screen going. So let me know that you guys can see it. And I am putting my chat up in front of me so that I will be monitoring the chat. And I'm happy to take questions throughout. But I also will have an ample time for questions at the end, and I'll deliberately answer each of your individual questions. So stick around till the end. I jam-packed some of this presentation with a lot of different pieces of common questions and guidance. So I've got a lot getting in there: career exploration, job search, branding, networking. I tried to put a bunch of things in there. And then, of course, your questions we will answer at the end or throughout. All right. Oh, whoopsie.
Yep. Okay, there you go.
Oh my goodness gracious. So my calendar is crazy. Are you seeing the right thing now?
Yes.
Goodness. All right. I hope no one had a heart attack seeing my calendar. All right, let's go. So who am I? I started out in the corporate world. I was in financial services. I started out at Goldman Sachs and then Bridgewater. I moved into HR research at Aon Hewitt. I did coaching training through NYU and got certified through the ICF. I did a tech MBA at NYU Stern, and then I've done career coaching through a variety of organizations, Flatiron School, WeWork, Columbia. I taught entrepreneurship at Binghamton. I also do coaching through Slate and Project Activate. So a bunch of different experiences, including building my own business for the last 5.5 years. And yeah, basically WOKEN is here to help every professional to be as intentional and thoughtful with your career decisions and your career steps as much as you humanly can be. So we are here to guide and support all of your career goals and challenges, whatever they may be. So we're going to dive in. Today we have a lot going on. We're going to talk about like career changes and a little bit of, pivoting mid-career, some common mindsets. We're going to talk about how to explore your best fit direction, a little bit about upskilling, job searching, networking, accountability, a little branding as well. I've got a bunch of things in here. All right. So first and foremost is, am I ready for a change? How do I even know what I'm feeling and what I'm needing and what I'm seeking? I think first and foremost, you want to think about how long have you been feeling ready for a change or noticing these feelings? How engaged are you in your current path? And sometimes we feel stuck in terms of, wanting more, but just not sure what's next. And that can sometimes hold us back. So recognize the need and desire for something more or new or different, but separate that from, I'm just not sure what that is yet. And we're going to answer that question. But recognizing your desire, I think, is a first step to feeling ready to, go explore what's out there. You want to ask yourself, is your challenge being fulfilled? Is your potential being fulfilled? What do you need and what do you want out of a career? That could be a great journaling exercise, just sort of brain dump. What am I looking for? What do I deserve out of a career? What do I need? What do I want? And how does my current path stack up? It will identify some opportunities for what you're looking more for. And then, of course, the mindset. We cannot ignore this, right? So sometimes it's subconscious and sometimes it's conscious, but is there a limiting belief? Is there a hesitation? Is there a question? Is there something that you're not sure about? And usually we can go gather information and get more clear on what it is you're looking for. But just noticing what's getting in your way is also really important, because we want you to feel informed and ready with your next steps and with your decisions, and not holding yourself back, whether it's based on limited information, a limiting belief, an assumption, or anything like that, right? And, we want to ask yourself, what mindset would you have to embrace in order to sort of really pursue and reach your potential? So sometimes these feelings are like scary, right? To be brave, to be vulnerable, to be open-minded, to be creative, to think about what change might be out there. But what I always say is, give yourself the benefit of the doubt of exploring and seeing what's out there, and then you can strategize. So there is a way of still being realistic with what are the factors that are important to me, but how can I be open-minded to explore what's out there and then use that information to decide what's right? So you don't want to start yourself out in a limited way. Getting comfortable with change. I think a lot of people are sort of just not sure. What would it look and feel like? Would I, still be able to work remotely? Or, what would my hours be? Or, what's it going to look and feel like? Do I have to commute? Like literally any salary, there's so many uncertainties and unknowns, but remember that those uncertainties can be questions, and we can really gather information that can inform your decision. So notice what you're not sure of and use that as fuel for, asking those questions and getting that information. As you can already tell, learning is the key, right? So I'm going to show you how to go through a process of exploration, but there's a step-by-step process to explore, learn, reflect, and just remember that you can learn as much as you need until you're confident about what it is you want to pursue. If you're still not sure yet, that means we need a little bit more information. So don't ever feel rushed into something. I recognize sometimes we don't have a lot of time on our side. That's a little different. That might mean you have a different job search strategy, but just where you have time to explore, do as much, exploration as you need to feel confident, and then you can go act on that decision and that pathway forward. Sometimes we learn about a path that we thought might be a good fit, and in reality, we learn it's not such a good fit. So give yourself the space to learn. And think about your support system. Like sometimes, when I talk about the subconscious, we may have loved ones or a partner or a spouse or family where we might feel pressure without even having had that conversation. So, figure out what support you need, what conversations you need around you, so that, you figure out, like, can I explore right now? To what extent, what do I need around me to feel good with my next steps? And so what I'm going to do is actually debunk some limiting mindsets for you. I want you to take note of what really is resonating with you and what you're going to take forward. And I'm going to try to give you a new framework for some of those limiting mindsets. So the first thing is stress. Like stress can be so normal and common as it relates to career decisions and career processes. What I want you to try to do is replace that stress with some structure. What I mean by that is, what is your goal? Is your goal to clarify your direction? Is your goal to land a job? Is your goal to pursue some upskilling opportunities? Is your goal to improve your personal branding? Really think about your goal and think about, what are the steps I can get from A to Z to get there? What is the support? What is the process? What is the guidance? And what resources can I have to move myself forward one step at a time? When we act out of stress, usually we just open up the job boards and immediate gratification. We try to apply to the next best thing. Take a step back and try not to operate when you're feeling that stress, but try to be a little more strategic with, what do I need, right? What's going to help me pursue this properly and in the best way? Security. So jobs, yes, they are here to take care of ourselves and our family, but we can't ignore our fit with the role, right? So we do want to look into, like, what is stable, what is secure, but don't let that be 100% of your decision. I have seen people who make choices purely for that. If you're not a fit with the role, you're not going to sort of survive in that role, right? You have to figure out, am I going to get good at this? Am I going to be natural at this? Am I going to be able to thrive on the job and be at all aligned with the work and interested in it, right? So, if you think about the most engaged employee on the team, they care to be there. They're the one who's going to be productive and innovative. So you can't ignore, you have natural affinities and capabilities and propensities, right? So what's a fit for you, and what is a secure, stable path as well? A lot of people will assume that they can't pursue something before they really understand it. So just make sure to learn and get all the right information before you decide what you're capable of or not capable of. And sometimes we look at our past. There are so many more transferable skills than you have that you probably don't even realize. And your story goes such a long way. So if you were to be able to say, here's why I'm a fit for this role, and you can prove that you understand the role and why you're aligned with it, or how you've done it in similar but different ways before, your due diligence of, like, what is a compelling answer, an authentic answer of, like, why that role is actually a fit, that's what's going to go such a long way. Showing that you've done your homework, showing that you truly understand the role and your fit, that's going to come across super well in an interview. So don't hold yourself back only by way of what you've done in your past. And sometimes people think about the long term, like, what am I going to do ultimately in, a decade or two? What I'd rather you think about is somewhat of short term and somewhat of long term. I like to over index on what is the right fit for me right now and where might that role lead in the future? That's kind of the way I like to think about it, because sometimes when we pick something that's too far out, you're going to change, the world's going to change, it just may be too far out to really make a good decision. So it's great to say what's an awesome fit right now, and then understand the possibilities of where it could go. Sometimes people tell me I'm open to any role, I'm open to any industry, I'm open to anything. And that's probably because you want to move quickly. I have seen it be I know it's counterintuitive, but I've seen it be, people sometimes misunderstand that just by being open to so many opportunities doesn't necessarily you're going to have more or that you're going to move faster. I actually would rather you be a little picky in terms of, okay, and maybe picky is the wrong word, let's say narrow, because when you know the right role for you and the right one or two industries of interest, you can better double down and find more of the right thing. And so you can still have that volume. But when you say, you're open, to me, that says, I'm not sure of what's right or best for me, right? So you want to make sure amongst the options that you have that clarity. A lot of times people pick just what they're aware of. I like to say, it's okay to just meet yourself where you are and be honest with yourself and with others to say, I'm not sure. I'm looking into A, B, C, and D. Do you happen to know anyone who does any of those things? I'd love an introduction. I'd love to learn more about those things. So don't just pick what your current knowledge set is. There's actually over 160,000 unique roles in the US alone. You don't need to learn every single one, but it's okay to say, I'm not sure. I'm exploring. Here's what I'm thinking about. Here's what I'm considering. Here's what I'm looking into. Do you know anyone in that realm, right? So it's okay to be in the midst of the uncertainty until you get to the other side of certainty. A lot of people think about interviewing just well, and it's like this transactional experience. Remember that it's a conversation. Who do you want to talk to about what, why, when, where, how, right? So networking or interviews are both a mirror into the job and into the work. So really it's, you're talking about problems, you're talking about how you're going to solve those problems or achieve those goals. Every job is helping someone with something. So those conversations are a clue into what is the focus. So don't just think about like, I got to tell them what they want to hear. Think about what room do I want to be in? What conversation do I want to be in? And, we think about applying to jobs. Think about exploration, the research, the networking, the learning, the information, the reflection that you can do to understand what's right for you is going to go such a long way to get you into the right conversations with the right people, the right information that's going to drive your strategy and your efficiency and your effectiveness in the job search so much faster versus solely relying on those job boards. And oftentimes we look at others around us. I like to say, keep your eyes on your own paper as much as you can. And remember that you are the one living and breathing that job every day. So if someone else around you can be a positive source of information or inspiration, great. But if not, come back to you and what can you do as a next step to move yourself forward. And the last bit is fear, kind of relevant to stress, but I always say replace fear with learning, right? So if you're not sure about something and you're hesitant and you don't have enough information, how can you either learn more or perhaps reflect and find more answers internally? But yeah, that fear can be a signal. It can be an opportunity to push your certainty forward. So don't see it as this bad thing, judging yourself for it, but identify the open gaps and fill those open gaps, right? Anyone want to write in the chat, what are some mindsets you're going to take forward with you? Anything resonating? Anything I didn't mention that you want to take with you? Tell us in the chat what's resonating and what you feel like is going to help you moving forward in your career direction. Learning, curiosity. Yes, an interview is a conversation, being picky, exploration. Oh my goodness, I love this. Slow down. Yes. Oh my goodness. Oh gosh, Cheryl, we got to save this list somewhere. This is so wonderful. Oh my goodness. Yes. Don't just stress apply, replace fear with learning. Oh my goodness. Incredible. I love this so much. Like truly, this is the best moment of my week right now. This is so wonderful. Thank you. And I hope this is helping you to move forward, because I always say the mindset, the accountability, and the practical strategy, like we can't ignore the mindset. It is the foundation of everything else. We're going to have our mindset right. Then we're going to put in the time, but we got to make sure that our strategy is right as well. All three of those components are so important. The mindset is the fundamentals. your mindset is going to drive your actions or inaction, and it's going to drive what you do and how you do it. So if you're not feeling good, take that step back and get support as well to work on the mindset. Let's not ignore that, right? Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, let's keep going. So I want to give you a 3-part framework that you can use moving forward if you're trying to clarify your next direction, or if you're trying to reflect on the past and figure out what went well or what didn't. This is a great framework to always come back to. Function means, what are you doing day to day? It's the style of the work, the skills, the projects, the actions. How are you dividing your time across the week? It's essentially the crux of the day and the role. The content is separate. So for example, if you're in sales, or you're doing a training role, or you're doing a research or analytics role, what is the content or the nature of what it is you're researching? What is it you're analyzing? What is it you're training on? What is it you're selling? So there's a difference between the style and those verbs and those actions versus the nature of kind of what you're working on. Thirdly is the environment. What does it look and feel like? What's the pace? What are the people like? Is it remote? You know, all the bells and whistles, right? And these are the words we typically hear: role, industry, culture. So just bring it down to the root, bring it down to the principles of what is a role. It's the function and the style of what I'm doing. What is the industry? It's the problem that we're all solving, the mission. What's the culture, right? It's the people. It's both the tangible and intangibles around me in my work environment. Okay, so this 3-part framework, always good to come back to. And your goal is to clarify your best fit direction in each of these 3 components. If you know what you want in each of these 3, look, there's no perfect job, but at least it's going to make it so much easier to assess opportunities and know when to say yes and no, or know what to negotiate, or know what to search for, what to apply for, etc. Right? It helps you know what questions to ask in the interview. It knows, helps you know what to listen for. It helps with so many different things. So career exploration is a process before the job search where you can learn and reflect to really prioritize what next step am I most confident in, what next step is the best fit for me, right? So that's kind of the definition of what exploration is all about. Whether you're mid-career or not, it is basically a process to be thoughtful and understand. If you're worried about pivoting mid-career, do you understand the reality of what that pivot takes? That gathering of information is going to help you make decisions. Why is this so important? It's going to help your job search be more efficient. It's going to help your interview be more compelling, and it's going to make sure you're fulfilled on the job itself. All right, here's the process for exploration. So first and foremost, you want to get motivated to pursue it. You want to ask yourself, am I in a moment where I can and want to pursue exploration? Then you want to reflect on your interests. I think, Cheryl, last time we might have done the reflection exercise, which we can do in another session, or we'll dig up that recording for you guys, because we actually have a self-reflection exercise where essentially you want to reflect on each of these 3 components really, really deeply. Then you want to come up with options. This is the problem with most assessments, just spit out the answer. You may be considering some roles, 5 or 10 roles, or 3 to 5 roles, however many it is. You may be considering some industries. Guess what? Then you're going to research, you're going to try to understand with online information, what are these roles and industries? But that's kind of not all, right? Networking is the key. When you meet with professionals who are in those roles and industries, you really need to know how to do networking well, but you can ask creative, concrete questions to accurately understand what those roles are and industries are like. Then what you want to do is what I call iterate. So every single week you would pivot. You would basically say, here's what I'm learning. Here's my reflections. Here's what I want to learn more about, less about. And you do this sort of pivot loops week over week. That's what gets you to the point of saying, I feel clear. I feel confident. I understand my direction. And that's where you start to pursue any upskilling, your personal branding, and your job search. So this is sort of the order of events that you want to pursue. If you still have options, keep learning and keep reflecting. I think it's rare that we see examples of people around us who have that full certainty about their best fit path, but that doesn't mean it's impossible to get there. So just remember, with more learning and more reflection in a fixed time frame, you absolutely can get to that place of saying, I feel good and informed about my path forward. How do you know if you're right for a certain role? You got to understand yourself and you got to understand the role. So really self-reflecting on what you're natural at, what you're great at, and then deeply, accurately understanding what this role truly looks and feels like. In a nutshell, those two things is what's going to help you. The other element, a lot of people talk about imposter syndrome. So, this is kind of a one little exercise, but the goal is you want to get objective with your skill set. So you might need to ask a manager or a colleague for feedback. You might need to do some written exercises to say, here's what I'm great at, here's what I'm good at, here's what I could be great at, here's what I'm not great at. All of that is relevant to anyone's skill set. So just try to honestly view your own skill set. And then you want to look at maybe a job posting and say, have I done this in a transferable, similar way somewhere else? Do I have this exact skill or similar skill, or do I not have this at all? If you meet about 70% of the requirements, you should apply. I think you all know the statistic. A lot of females will, sort of lessen what do I apply for if I don't meet 100%. So I say about 70%, give or take, is a great rule of thumb. But job search, you're still learning, you're still exploring, and you're still reflecting. And guess what? You're using networking during job search. So keep using networking to learn what are the roles that are the best fit for me, or can I fill in the gaps in my skills with a little upskilling or project or hands-on work? So there's always iteration that you can have. You're not in this like fixed vacuum. Like, you want to look at what you're noticing in the roles, in the patterns, and see what makes sense for you to adjust in your direction. You might look at a job posting and say, what have I done well? What have I not done well? What am I great at? What could I learn? You can sort of give yourself a mini little assessment based on that job posting. Just be wary. You might want another pair of eyes and ears, because it's very easy for sometimes our limiting beliefs to get in the way and pulling yourself out of the running. Upskilling can be amazing with pivoting. So you can represent on your LinkedIn, represent on your resume that you are pursuing some sort of project or course or pro bono work or freelance work or certification. There's so many ways to do extra skill development to show that you've done what it is they need you to do. So how can you find opportunities? If you're working currently, you might even try to get a project internally at your current job. And you want to make sure that when you pick upskilling, that you're doing your homework, you're networking with professionals to understand what is most worth my while. But there's just so many ways to build your skill set, especially for a pivot, to really showcase that you have what it takes, and also that you're invested in making that pivot happen, that you're serious about it, right? So there's just a lot of good thinking to go into upskilling. Be thoughtful about your choice. That's the problem. We all want to do so many courses, but really I like to, if you remember, I like to just do that exploration first and then say, okay, what upskilling is most in line with my goal and with my direction, to make it easier for you to pick the best upskilling program or opportunity. So let's see here. Okay, job search. So this is kind of how to think about what can go into your job search. First and foremost, we talked a lot about exploration, learning, and research. That does not stop during your job search. You have to keep learning. Now, in an ideal world, you have the clarity before the job search begins. But even during the job search, notice what you're hearing and learning during networking by reading job postings and during interviews. Networking, we've touched on this a little bit. Most jobs are landed through networking. So you have to have these informational chats. You got to get your foot in the door. You got to meet people who are in the roles, in the teams, in the companies, in the industries that you want to be in, and learn from them. And they're going to meet you by way of that as well. So that's a way to stand out. And it's a great way of learning to figure out what's a fit for you. So there's so many benefits. I would say 10 to 20%. 20% maximum on the job online job boards or job search engines. Then we've got skill development, which we talked about, and reflection, right? So make sure you're measuring how you're doing and how can you adjust, right? So what's going well, what's not going well. And then we also have, what's missing here, by the way, is personal branding. So personal branding is another component, building your thought leadership, resume, cover letter, professional summary, LinkedIn profile, a video pitch, portfolio. So apologies, but pretend it's on the slide. Okay. I'm going to give you a quick framework for a professional summary, just because, again, I wanted to jam pack this with value, and especially for mid-career, you want to tell your story really, really well. So professional summary is a concise framework that you can actually use for the tell me about yourself question, or in writing on a LinkedIn about section or on a resume. So the quick, and I know I'm moving quickly, but the 3-part framework is your background, your strength, and your direction. So if you're ever trying to introduce yourself or do a written summary, this is a great 3-part concise framework to help you introduce yourself and also to highlight the story you want to tell, because you can decide, what do I want to highlight from my background? What do I want to highlight from my strengths? And where do I want to take that in the future? It's sort of this like powerful story that starts to make sense. If it makes sense to you, it's going to make sense to someone else. So rather than them just reading your resume and judging your background, tell the story. It doesn't have to be long. It could be, 3 lines. It could be 5 lines maximum. It does not need to be super, super long, but you get to own who you are, right? And here's a framework to use it, but your choice of the phrases and the skills and the keywords of what you share is absolutely your choice. Now, you got to know what you want, of course, but this is such a powerful tool to make sure you tell it the way you want others to hear it, right? Cool. What else? We've got a bonus for branding and networking. So yeah, we talked about the professional summary. Functional resumes can sometimes be interesting for a career pivot. For example, instead of doing reverse chronological, you may group your skills into like 3 to 4 main skill categories. Like, say you've done project management and client management and like operations or sales or marketing or whatever it is. You can group your experiences or achievements by function. Sometimes that format could be helpful depending on the type of pivot you're making. And LinkedIn profile optimization, I cannot say enough. LinkedIn is almost more important than the resume. So absolutely get your profile optimized. And yeah, it's just such a key way to get the inbound leads. Optimizing your headline, your about section, your previous experiences, recommendations, your settings open to work. There's so many things that are going to help people find you and reach out to you with the right open roles. And of course, when you're owning your story, if you're thinking about networking or interviews, practice out loud. If you're not sure if you're coming across well, do a mock interview, get a coach, a mentor, a peer, someone to remember that you own. How do you tell this story? What do you highlight? What do you share? How do you literally tell about past projects and experiences? That's all in your power. That's all in your control. And just don't forget about networking, getting your foot in the door, identifying avenues of connections, phrasing your outreach really well, focusing on learning, focusing on these informational calls. And that is mainly what I've got. I know I went fast. I wanted to leave a lot of time for Q&A. Hopefully the wheels are turning. Just so you know, this is kind of what WOKEN does. We help you with all of these different steps and teach you how to do it, where to do it, why to do it, when to do it, and what to do. And of course, coach you and give you tools to do it. And really just making sure that you feel supported with every single career step along the way. I'll pop in our website here. But yeah, I see we've got 12 questions, which is so wonderful. Cheryl, let me know. I mean, I can just kind of pop right in there, but if you have guidance for me, let me know. But I'm just going to pop into the Q&A. So keep putting things in there and I'm going to get started on Q&A. So let's see. We've got, as a late career changer, I'm worried about possible ageism. Do you have advice on how to progress a career as someone in their 40s who isn't as senior as many in a similar age group and who isn't interested in the managerial route? How do I stay relevant? So first of all, if you're not interested in a managerial route, you again want to do exploration to understand what functions or what roles can you have at the right level that might be an individual contributor. So just like making sure you understand the role that's a fit, that like what role exists that's not managerial, and doing that exploration to understand it. Other than that, the ageism question, again, we have to bring it back to what we can control. So sometimes on the resume, there might be tips like, you can say, you can remove the year from your education and things like that. But with ageism, like truly, I like to just come back to the best practices of like networking, getting your foot in the door, focusing the conversation on all of your skills and value, what you can bring to the table, asking really good questions to prove your fit. Like you kind of just want to really focus on everything you can control. Ageism is sort of an unfortunate thing that may happen. and people may judge. So we can control, our branding presence, our LinkedIn, our resume, as well as how we come across, our communication, our clarity in how we speak about our experiences. So that's kind of what I come back to with ageism. Let's see. Tips when facing a situation where you need a job sooner rather than later, but you want to make sure the next role fits with your goals, even if it's not perfect. Trade-offs should you be thinking about? Okay, great. So if you need a job quickly, the easiest thing to do is get a role that is like exact or similar to what you've done in the past. A way of optimizing while still moving quickly is think about the size of the organization, think about the industry of interest, think about the environment and the culture and what you're looking for. And really, you can get strategic to identify 10 or 20 organizations that you'd be really thrilled to work at. So you keep the role the same, but you can sort of optimize for those other two categories. That's kind of the quickest way to land a job while still thinking about how to optimize and try to take a step forward. That's probably my quickest answer, but if you've got follow-ups to that, let me know and we can talk more. Let's see. I'm working at a company I really like, and we have an acquisition in late Q3. I want to be ready and not caught unprepared, but I don't want to go applying to roles that I'm not ready to take. I don't want to leave. It's possible I won't leave my job, but I have no idea right now what actions can I take. So great question. If you need to be proactive, if you're not sure what your company is going to do, if there's going to be changes to the workforce, clarify what you would want if you had to go look, and network. Build relationships, like maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks. Can you meet one new person who's in a role, in a team, in a company, or in an industry of interest to you? Planting the seeds, building relationships, learning from others. That's going to be critical so that they can keep you top of mind. And also that way you're not reaching out to them only when you're ready to, sort of get a job, but you're building that actual professional networking relationship with them. You might even get involved with some side things like, groups or memberships or associations or meetups or events that you can join. How can you build your network that way? You might even get involved with a little skill development. That can be a networking opportunity. So kind of from today's talk, if you think about what would I typically be doing during job search, you could sort of just do those similar activities without applying, but do all the other things, networking and stuff, but make it like a little more passive, perhaps. Set goals, maybe once every 2 weeks, you could do something like that. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, and make sure to, of course, add these questions to the Q&A. I'm going to keep going through the Q&A. How do you get over the overwhelming feeling of open-ended possibilities? Great question. I have a platform that helps you, like, basically you've got a big open-ended initial reflection, or for us, it's an initial career assessment. From there, you want to narrow in. I usually limit that to 10 roles and 10 industries. So that's kind of an initial answer to your question, which is take who you are in each of those 3 categories. So the function, like the affinities and what you're natural at, then the problems and the topic areas you're interested in, and then the environment. If you reflect on those and you come up with maybe 10 roles or 10 industries maximum, that's a good starting point, because usually choices number 11 through 20, are, I'm not going to say they're unnecessary, but if you identify your top 10, which you don't even need 10, you could have top 3, top 5. That's a way of saying, I'm coming up with some relevant, viable options that feel applicable to who I am, and then let me go look into them. The other element is that during networking, you may very well learn about roles that weren't on your initial list. That's normal, but you can sort of let the process, it sort of takes on a mind of its own. You could let it sort of flow, and you could sort of follow the breadcrumbs, but you don't need to start out with like every option. So that's kind of a way of starting big, narrowing in, and then sort of like continuing to narrow in from there. Okay, let's see. Are there any specific approaches you should focus on if you've been stagnating your career for a long time, only making lateral moves through the last couple of jobs, not growing into better roles opportunities? So that has to do with kind of like, how do you get promoted, basically? And there's sort of a formula that I kind of have with promotion, which is you need to be proactive and you need to be explicit. So say you have a manager ideally like a year ahead of performance review time. So say you just had a performance review, or really you can do it whenever, but ideally, at every performance review, you would want to say to them, what do you need to see from me so that I can prove I'm capable and operating at the next level, whatever the next level is. You can literally say at, senior product manager, what is the title? And then you want them to give you that feedback. And if they have 3 things or 4 things or 5 things, you want them to say out of their own mouth, and you want it to be a comprehensive list, and you want it to be a clear list. So once you write down the goals, you want to share that document together, and you want to make sure that your goals are so clear that like it's almost written in like a SMART goal fashion, where it's like, if I were to achieve this, it's going to be clear. Like it could be a yes or no answer of like, did I achieve this? Yes or no? And I actually have a template where it's kind of like, what's my goal? What are all the different ways I can actually work on this goal? What is, how and when am I going to put in time towards this? And what are my goals if I were to break it down per quarter? And then what's the status? So you want to project manage your goals, and that might have to do with hard skills, soft skills, but you want to comprehensively, clearly set those goals with your manager. And then every single month, you want to get feedback and really incorporate it into your work, into your projects, and then say, how am I doing? Did you see that I presented to the leadership? Like, how did that go? Like, you literally want to like sort of shove it in their face and make it so clear so that when a year rolls around, you've already spoken about this 12 times and it's a no-brainer. And you have to sometimes actually figure out how to develop your skills to meet those goals. So that's like in a nutshell, kind of the promotion framework. There's a lot more we could talk about. I'm going to keep going. And just so everyone knows, I am looking at that actual Q&A feature. So I do see the chat, but please submit it in the Q&A feature within Zoom. Let's see, we've got with so many job listings being a placeholder or inactive, how can we apply thoughtfully while also sending out enough to be considered? That's a great question. This is kind of why I limit the job applications that you do to like 10 to 20% of your time. So if you remember the slide with all the percents, that's what percent. Say you're only doing an hour or 2 or 5 or 10, however many hours a week in job search, what percent of your time is being spent on the job boards? That's really how I would answer your question. You got to network with at least 50% of your time. That's kind of the short answer to your question. As you mentioned, there's a lot of open roles that are not posted online. There's a lot of roles posted online that are not real. So yeah, that's kind of the quick answer to that question. Let's see. How do you pitch your transferable skills in a way that will be looked at by companies? So it depends like where you're pitching, your skills. Is this during an interview? Is it on your resume, right? There's a lot of different ways we could talk about this. With resume, you want to use phrases and keywords. Like sometimes there's the same way of saying something in 2 different ways, right? So can you use the keywords and jargon and buzzwords that your intended job title uses, even if it means the similar thing to what you've done before? So how do you phrase your past experiences in such a way that is relevant to your future direction, right? That's kind of what transferability is all about. How do you sort of speak their language, even though you're still also accurately explaining what it is you've done, right? I hope that makes a little bit of sense. But yeah, it depends on if we're talking interviews or resume. That's sort of a super quick answer. I am going to keep going with these. Please stop me if you need anything, Cheryl, but I'm going to keep looking at our questions. So let's see. I'm at a fork in my career. I could continue down the path of a high-level individual contributor, or I could continue the path of management and leadership. I'm applying for jobs, have 2 resumes, each tailored to each path. How should I approach my LinkedIn? I feel like if I optimize for one, it will negate the other. So for someone who has 2 different paths, I know you may not want to hear this, but I would really reflect on which one you want. I think people really think you're ruling things out if you double down on one trajectory, but like those are very, very different things. To manage a team or to just be a high-level individual contributor, you're going to optimize your brand if you can figure out which one of those paths you really want. I usually think, and in my experience, people are not going to close you off. Like if they like your skills and your background and you brand yourself as an IC, they could still potentially reach out about a management job and vice versa. But I personally think having two roads like that and having two resumes like that is overwhelming. It's confusing. And if anything, it halves your time, and it halves your branding, right? Imagine you could double down your brand so much more so. So that's just my 2 cents. I would really try to push your reflection to say, how do these two things differ? And if I had to prioritize amongst them, what's my preference and why, right? There's different factors as to what you may decide, what your priorities are, what your interests are, what makes sense. So I would try to just push your thinking and push your clarity forward. How do I present transferable skills to apply for a job? That I guess I kind of touched on a little bit. So again, in the resume, you want to try to translate the same experiences into phrasing that means the same thing, but it's using keywords from your intended direction. For example, if you're an educator, instead of saying that you tracked students' data, can you say I tracked individuals' data or something like that, right? That's just one example. How can you say the same thing in another way, using their jargon, using their language? The same goes for interviews, to be honest. If you're telling a story, instead of mentioning that you were with your teacher, cohort, you could say I was with my colleagues and we all had to determine how to get a consistent process going because we each had similar processes in different remits and we had to get on the same page. You could say, there's sort of words that you can use to refer to the same thing, right, with other keywords, right? I hope that makes sense. Let's see, recommendations for people not getting past the last round on interviews. So if you are not getting past last round interviews, so I think about job search like a funnel, okay? So the top of the funnel is, are you landing first rounds? Are you getting your foot in the door? If not, we need to do more networking. We need to do like events and communities and groups, and how do we get you out there? But if you're landing first round, second round, third rounds, but no offers, it's either usually one of two things. Either your communication and how are you articulating your fit and your skills, and are you being authentic? Are you being clear? Are you being impactful? Do you need to run a mock interview with a coach? Or are they just not the right role? Or sometimes it's company culture fit. But if there's truly a pattern across multiple companies, it's usually the type of role or the level of role, or the communication styles. That's usually what I see if that's a trend. How to answer salary expectation questions as a career pivoter and still new to the industry. So with salary, you just want to do your homework and do your research and understand what is market standard for that level of role, that type of role, that location, that industry. And then you could sort of go into the conversation. First, you want to see if they'll speak before you speak. And then, ask them what their range is, what the budget is. And then you could say something like, based on where I've been at in the past and based on what I understand to be market standard for this role, what I'm looking at is X, or what I'm looking for is X. You don't have to share your past salary, but that's kind of phrasing that you can use. Let's see. Okay, an example of when a functional resume is better would be usually just for a career pivoter. Like I have a few different resume templates, but like some are just highlighting more of who you are. Your strengths and how do you categorize them by the type of skill or category of skill, versus chronologically just looking at your past experiences. So if you're pivoting and you want to highlight transferable skills, if you had a category of like marketing or sales or operations or project management, and you could just show the bullets for when you've done that without making it just like, usually it's like organization and then the bullets of what you did there, organization and then the bullets of what you did there. So that's when a functional resume is better, is really a pivot, a career pivot, when you need to highlight skills of what you've done before. Another way to do it, by the way, with the functional skills is, even say you did the chronological, even within the body of those bullets, you could actually have the category headers. So say you have 6 bullets for a certain experience, you could actually put little subheaders and say, this was project management, this was process improvement, this was operations, this was client management. So you could actually even put those little functional headers even within a chronological resume. If you've been recently laid off, what are your tips for following this process while feeling the pressure and time crunch? So if you have a time crunch, again, sometimes working with a coach helps because you want to understand like what is the typical timeline for job search and what is my financial runway and what should my strategy be based on that. So you need to like understand if you have the time to pivot or not. And if you don't, again, you want to look for similar or same exact role titles in other companies would be your fastest thing that you can do. So the other thing, yeah, so that's really a decision. It's like, can you afford the time to fully explore or not? It's kind of like a bit of a yes or no, and you want to come up with a game plan and a strategy that feels good. You can always come back to this exploration process when you can afford the time, but job search strategy does have to do with your personal timeline. Create a network as new in the field. Okay, yeah, creating a network when you're new in the field. So with networking, you want to think about being really open-minded. Who can you network with? Your personal network, your network's network, friends, family, acquaintances, past colleagues. If you've ever been part of some hobby club, membership association, a gym, a fitness, a wine club, anything you've ever done in your life, even personal social groups, you never know who people know. You want to see if they could be a source of introductions. The other thing is alumni networks. If you attended an undergraduate degree, you should really find your alumni network on LinkedIn. It's such a powerful source of introductions and warm connections. And then, yeah, I think like if you're new in a field, show up to events, get into communities, get into groups, get on email newsletters, follow people on LinkedIn, follow groups, like get into the discussion boards, like digitally, where is those conversations happening? Slack groups, tech ladies, like what are all the ways and places that you can find the professionals who are in the roles or in the industries that, you want to meet essentially, right? Let's see, networking. So advice, job leads if they have, and helpful information that they may have. You're not sure how to do this without sounding like you're begging. So without sounding like you're begging would be don't beg. Know what you're asking. So usually with networking, the best way to do it is just focus on information and learning. When you do your outreach messaging, just say, I would love to learn from you about A, B, C, and D, and give them a few topics, give them an agenda of like, I have a few questions for you. I'd love to spend 20 minutes if you're willing to give me a little time. I'd love to learn from you. On the call itself, you can uncover job leads, but don't mention that up front because that's what doesn't feel great for anyone. And then when you're on the call, you guys can, if they bring up certain jobs or there's open jobs, like they're going to let you know. So I would sort of leave that to the conversation and it helps it feel a little bit better. Okay, let's see. Tips for exploring different career paths that might require going back to school. Similar process, but any places in the journey you'd focus on more. So that's a really good question. In terms of if you're considering, going back to school, well, first of all, you do the same exact process. A little extra focus really would just be like, not necessarily focusing on the school itself, but rather focusing on what are the jobs that I would get after this school program? And like, do I understand the day-to-day of the roles or like, where could this program lead and understanding the jobs? And then secondarily, you could actually run a very similar process to understand the options for which school or which program, right? You could do the same networking process to differentiate which school is the best fit for you. So it's really kind of the same process, to be honest. I mean, sometimes school is either beneficial or sometimes it's required. So you do also want to understand, like, do I need this or is it a nice to have, right? That's another element of thinking. Those are my quick thoughts, but if you have specific thoughts on, going back to school, let me know if there's something you'd want to learn more about. Let's see. Okay, advice to someone who's been at a company for 20 years, whose network is internal, not external. How do you propose authentic way to network and get your foot in the door? So that one we kind of talked about a little bit, right? Like how can you leverage your network's network, your alumni network, get into groups and meetups and memberships and associations and communities. So those are, events, conferences. You want to think about, your network's network, alumni network, and sort of like events and communities and groups. Those are just like the quickest way I can summarize building a network. I'm sure there's more. Let's see. Breaking out of your comfort zone and try networking. Great. Running informational calls as a way to introduce yourself. So what that means is during networking or during job search, when you network and you run an informational networking call, you are learning from them, but they're also meeting you. So by way of what you ask, they can be impressed as to your knowledge and your fit. Your questions may show them who you are as a professional. They're gonna, by way of what you ask, it's actually gonna be impressive, and actually tell them more than you may realize about what it is and what you've done, because you're gonna have a conversation about, two professionals in the field are just gonna be chatting. So it's a great way of showing them who you are as a candidate and learning about, about whatever you want to learn about. But you want to think about job search as getting your foot in the door, and we can't just rely on the online application. So that's what I mean by informational networking calls are a way of also introducing who you are. Okay, let's see. Good questions about culture. I don't want to hear what I see on the website. Yes. So great question. Don't say what's the culture. Ask about, well, first reflect on what do you think you want in a culture. So for example, I like to feel empowered in my workplace, and I could say something like, tell me about a time that someone on the team brought up a new idea or suggestion, and how did that go? They may tell you, you know what, this person is running with this idea that he or she proposed yesterday. There may be someone else who, has to present their case, get buy-in, or there may be some backlog of budgeting projects once a year. So like, you're going to get a sense of like, how do they handle that kind of stuff? So yeah, tell me about a time, or just like, yeah, being concrete and being creative with how you phrase it to figure out like, how am I going to best get the information I need, whether it's a story or you can like, yeah, you really just want to kind of wordsmith your questions and prepare and reflect. How can I ask this? And spend time doing that. That's kind of a quick answer to your question. Let's see, advice on what to put on your resume when you have a job that lasted 4 months. What I would suggest in that instance is probably only put the years. So in that case, if it was in 2022, like the whole resume would just be years rather than month and year. That's kind of my quick answer, to be honest. But also you could just add 1 or 2 bullets. You would just want to explain what it is you did do. Even if it was 4 months, you still did something. So I would try to write 1 or 2 bullets. Okay. Let's see, tips where networking feels unnatural. I struggle to make the moves to network because it always feels disingenuous. I'm only talking to you because I want something you can help me get. This is the thing. You got to remember, networking is normal. It is common. It is standard, right? They're helping you. Guess what? Someone helped them. And guess what? Someone's going to ask you for help one day. This is how the professional world goes round. You're going to be courteous. You're not asking for too much. You're asking for 20 minutes. Many people like to actually help you, and some people like to share, and some people like to give and be, helpful to others. And not everyone's going to answer. And if they do answer, they're willing to help. So you kind of just have to be a little scrappy, a little resourceful, and a little vulnerable, and a little brave, and a little courageous, and know that you're still being kind and thoughtful and prepared, and respectful and professional. And also, they're meeting you. What can you offer to them? Can you offer to open up your network to them? Maybe they're seeking something. Maybe they're trying to hire for something. Maybe they're seeking something personally. You could say, I'd love to offer you anything if there's something you're seeking right now or in the future. Like, they're also building their network, right? Which these days people know proactively it's good for them to do as well. That's kind of my quick thoughts. Yeah, networking. I know people have a lot of common hesitations. Let's see, tips for approaching job searching while dealing with burnout or stress from work. Actually, Sam, I don't know if you can find this in 4 minutes, but I do have a blog about how to maintain your sort of motivation when job search can feel stressful and draining, and it can burn you out. So if you remember in one of those slides, self-care, if you're job searching full-time, make sure you are exercising and you're taking breaks and you're meditating and you're still doing fun things. People forget to take a day off during job search. You still give yourself some PTO. Like, I understand it's hard and it's stressful, but you have to take care of yourself. You have to try to find excitement and motivation. And guess what? Skill development is a great way of feeling positive and productive and innovative and creative by doing some hands-on projects. If you, during the job search, to drum up some excitement. If you're not enjoying the research and the networking of what you're doing during job search, that should be interesting to you professionally as well. So try to find the professional interest and intrigue and innovation and meaning to what are these roles and industries about? What do I care about? How can I align? How can I find some energy and alignment and excitement from, the work I want to be doing? I mean, it's funny. I have another blog on sort of like why hating your job search is not serving you. Remember, you want to figure out, what do I want to research? Who do I want to network with? Right? All that stuff is still super, super, super important. For the sake of time, I will pause here. We got so many amazing, amazing, amazing questions, but please reach out. Like, honestly, you can email. I would love to take all these questions and make some videos and make some blogs and make sure you have the resources and answers that you need. So please reach out. Maybe Cheryl, we can download those questions and maybe we could make a resource out of it. But if not, we always do offer a free initial 20-minute call. So if you feel like you could use some support, please reach out. And by the way, our resources page has a ton of downloadables and meditations and videos and past events and blogs. So please check that out. It's all free on there. Yeah, please stay in touch. If you join our email list, you'll hear about upcoming events in the future. And we hope to be back with Tech Ladies. We're trying to do about once a quarter, but we'll see, how else we can stay engaged in the, digital conversation with Tech Ladies, and just stay in touch. And we hope to help you in the future, and just hang in there. Job search is hard, but you're going to be stronger on the other side. Deep breaths. We're here to support you. And I'll sort of close us out for the day, but please have a wonderful rest of your day, your week, and please stay in touch. Okay.